Hi, it's Penny here, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing my reading for the first quarter of the year. I'm going to talk about some of my favorite books, some of the most disappointing books I've read, and then also I want to check in on my goals because I told myself I would check in every quarter to see how I was going. But let's start by talking about some of my favorite books. So I usually do this by breaking it into three categories: physical, audio, and graphics. I'm still having a minor meltdown about the use of the word physical because I did in fact read the books that I'm going to say are my favorite physical books digitally, but I still don't think there's a better way to categorize it different from audio and graphics. I used to say textbook, but that's a whole different concept, so I don't know. Anyway, my favorite physical book was the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir. So I did actually read Gideon in December, but I read Harrow and Nona in January and February, and I can't pick between Harrow and Nona because I love them both in very different ways. I don't know, actually, maybe I liked Harrow better. I think on a different day I might choose differently. Anyway, I'm sure you've heard about this series, but if you somehow haven't, it is a story about this society of spacefaring necromancers where there are 9 houses. And in the first book, basically, each house is sending representatives to this competition. It's like a necromancy competition, but each necromancer also has what they call a cavalier that's kind of there as their knight or their protector. So Gideon is the cavalier of Harrow. Gideon actually didn't want to go to this competition, but Harrow manipulates her into going. And the whole time you're at this competition, you don't really know what's going on, even when people start being murdered. But actually, Gideon was the most straightforward of the whole series because Harrow gets even weirder. You will spend most of Harrow asking yourself whether you actually know what's going on. And then in Nona the Ninth, you don't even know who the main character is. She's this very adorable young woman who just wants to hang out with her school friends and play with dogs. But at the same time, the kind of bigger conflict in the world of necromancy is escalating and escalating. Honestly, one of the weirdest series I've ever read. I also definitely don't think some of the humor and just some of all the weirdness will be for everyone, but the series is also very hyped. I especially really enjoyed all the New Zealand references throughout this because Tamsin Muir is a New Zealander and I'm a New Zealander, so I extra love this for that reason. Then for favorite audiobooks, I actually have 2 that I want to talk about. First is another series where I actually started it in December, and that is the Rampart trilogy by Emma Carey. So this series, we're following this boy named Coley. He lives in this kind of post-apocalyptic world where, amongst other things, the trees and the plant life is now much more dangerous, and as a result humans are kind of living in these small isolated villages. But they do have some pieces of remaining technology. They don't really understand a lot of this technology properly, but they are able to use some of it to protect themselves and keep themselves safe. And in Coley's village, there are the ramparts, who are the people who are able to use the technology. And when you come of age, 16 I think, there's a test that you undergo to see whether the technology will wake for you. So we kind of right at the beginning of the series have Coley undergoing this test and then kind of following along with him as he learns more about the technology. And actually in the second book, we get introduced to a second perspective character as well as they learn about the technology kind of in a different way. So the first thing I would say about this series is I definitely recommend actually reading this via audiobook. The way that the characters in this speak is very a particular dialect, kind of old-timey, but obviously it's a result of them being in a future where there's no longer any real education, or a lot of the knowledge of the world has been lost. And I found reading that dialect on the page very difficult. I found myself often stumbling over words and just it was a lot slower and more tedious to get through. But when I listened to the audiobook, the audio narration is great. And the odd grammar and the odd phrases were just a lot easier. It felt very natural to listen to someone speaking that way. I think because we don't generally speak in a way that's grammatically correct, so that kind of grammatical failing didn't bother me as much. In fact, I think it really did help to make the characters feel like they were in a different time. But also, what I really loved about this series is hard to talk about because it is spoilers, but it's to do with their technology, and the more they learn about the technology, the more I loved it. Can I go as far to say that it was the technology-based characters that I loved the most? I'll go that far and no further. Anyway, I love this series. Definitely recommend it. Then my other favorite audiobook was Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. So this is a really popular book at the moment, and I think it's deserving all the hype. I will say, as I've said in every other video where I've mentioned this, I read The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang, and I didn't really like it. Like, I liked the first half, but I thought, for me, what happened in the second half didn't really deliver on what I wanted based on the first half. And I know that's what some people like about that book, but I just, not only that, but I also didn't think the writing and the world building and the character development in The Sword of Kaigen was as good. But Blood Over Brighthaven is so much better. So if you, like me, read The Sword of Kaigen and didn't really like it, and because of that you're not picking up Blood Over Brighthaven, I would say give Blood Over Brighthaven a go, because I was so relieved to really love it. So we're following this young woman, and she's being allowed to test into this magic school, but they only let women do this test like once every decade, basically just to say, see, we told you women weren't good enough. So she feels a lot of pressure to succeed, and I'm pretty sure the synopsis does tell you that she does pass the test. However, even then, they're still very against her. And as she kind of experiences that, she also has her eyes opened to some of her own privileges and I guess some of the other suffering going on in the world and the result of the whole like system of society that they have. I really love the journey that our main character goes on, and just the way that the book explored systems of oppression. I also really liked the magic system and the way that it was so sciencey feeling, and just the way that they study it being so academic. And it's also quite a unique magic system, because they basically use these typewriters to like draw energy from this other dimension, and then like use essentially like coding to direct how that energy is going to be used. Very interesting, and the way that it integrated into the plot was great. I really enjoyed it. Then for favorite graphics, probably my favorite graphic that I read in the first quarter was Cursed Princess Club by Lamb Cat. However, this was a reread for me, so it's not really a surprise, and I've talked about this a million times. If you haven't heard me talk about it, just know that you should read it. If I tell you the synopsis, you might not believe me, but I'm pretty sure anybody could and would enjoy Cursed Princess Club, unless you hate fun, I guess. So if I'm not picking rereads, I guess for graphic novels, I would pick Monstrous Volume 9. So the Monstrous graphic novel series is a series I've been reading for quite a long time now. I will admit Volume 8 was not my favorite of the series, but Volume 9 I feel like was back doing a lot of what I loved in this series. It really focuses on like a big war type conflict between the different groups in this world, with like a magical kind of element causing more problems. The art especially is really beautiful, but also just the characters are great, including like the demon type creatures and the half animal, half human creatures, and also the cats. Always love the cats. So again, Monstrous has been very popular for a while now. You've probably heard about it, but if you haven't, I think it's worth checking out. Okay, then to change the vibes, let's talk about the most disappointing books of the year so far. And firstly, we have to start with Malice by John Gwynne. I wanted to participate in Becca and the Books' read-along of this series. However, I had 2 goes at reading the first book in the series, and it's just not for me. It's kind of like a Norse-inspired fantasy, and we're following a bunch of different characters who are clearly going to be somewhat involved in this prophecy about this battle of the gods. It's like light versus dark. A lot of people really love this series, and I don't get it. My first attempt at reading it, I actually thought it was not that bad. I just couldn't connect to the characters, and I thought I would just put it aside for a while and try again. But then when I came back to it, I thought, wow, the writing is terrible. Like, I didn't notice it so much in the first go, but on the second go, I just felt like the dialogue was awful. The descriptions were lackluster. The characters were all kind of samey and boring. Like, I don't know. I know people love this, but I don't even think I'm going to try it again. I think that would be a bad idea. So I DNF'd it, and I'm kind of sad about it, but also glad that I'm not going to have to push through like 7 books or something. And I have heard that it gets better, but like, I still don't think it would be worth it for me. If you love it, I'm glad. I'm super glad you love it. But for me, it's a no. Then as far as audiobooks, now normally audiobooks turn out to be more disappointing for me because I'm willing to take more of a risk on audiobooks. Like often if I'm not sure if I'm going to like a book, I'll try it on audiobook because audiobook's just a little bit easier to get through when you're not enjoying things. Like if you're reading a physical book and you're not enjoying it, you slow down in reading it. But if you're listening to an audiobook and you're not enjoying it, then actually often I'll pump the speed up so I'll get through it faster. So audiobooks, normally I take more risks. However, this audiobook, that is my most disappointing audiobook, is less disappointing than Malice. And that is The Silence Factory by Bridget Collins. Now maybe it helps because I mainly picked this up because I love The Betrayals by Bridget Collins, but then I had also picked up The Binding by Bridget Collins, and while I love the first half, the second half let me down. So I picked this up hoping that it would give me the feeling of The Betrayals, but also not really expecting it to, and it didn't. I thought about DNFing this multiple times throughout it, but it always just kept me just interested enough. It's a story about this spider silk, and one side of it creates this silence. The other side maybe has some problems, but one side you can use it to like create a lovely feeling of silence. And we're following one man who's kind of found himself helping out with the advertising of the silk, as well as kind of in the past, this woman who was married to the guy that like found these spiders that make the silk and like invented the silk. They kind of stole it from the native people of the island that they got these spiders from. Anyway, the guy, or the family actually, involved in the spider silk, awful people. And so it was very frustrating following these main characters that are in love with people from this family, even though these family are clearly awful people, you know? So when the main characters are trying to please these awful men, it's just hard to get on board with anything that's happening. And the plot was like fine, but not particularly amazing. So like I was disappointed, but also it wasn't terrible. It was just kind of averagely meh. Then in terms of graphic novels, I actually have been reading a lot less graphic novels this year. So we'll see whether that changes as the year continues. The only thing I could really put here is the Witch Hat Atelier series, which I think I started last year. I'm not sure because I'm actually only up to volume 5 now. So this is a really cute manga story about these young girls learning this magic, which is kind of like drawing based. And it's really cute, kind of adorable. Each of the girls is kind of going through different like emotional struggles, mainly around their identity and like who they want to be or how they want to live their lives. And I think maybe the people who love this find those struggles very relatable. For me, I find that part of the story just boring. It's too cutesy. It's not doing enough with it. There is kind of this underlying part to the plot where there's like a bigger, darker threat to the world of magic. Okay, I just had to pause while my neighbor did some horrible noisy thing in their backyard right near where I film. And now I've forgotten what I was saying. But the summary is Witch Hat Atelier is just not giving me what I wanted. And I'm not DNFing it though, which you might question, why not? But it's just a very easy graphic series to read when I'm in a situation where I want something to do other than scroll on social media, but I don't really want something where I really need to focus. So we'll see what happens with this series and me, but not my favorite. Okay, now let's move into looking at some of my reading goals for the year. So firstly, we have the number of books. So my goal was kind of to read 100 things this year, but also I had kind of said more 50 audiobooks and 50 text, physical. I'm calling them text in my graph, okay? Because text, audio, and graphics makes sense to me. But just don't think of it as a text book, because that's not what we're talking about. Anyway, so I have read 16 audiobooks and 21 text things. Let's say things. I think if we say we're 25% of the way through the year, my goal would be to be at 12 and a half books for each of those. So obviously I'm ahead. We're doing okay. I will say for the text things, actually a lot of them weren't books. They weren't books. A lot of them this year have been short stories. So I think whereas last year my stats were all ruined by me reading too many graphic novels, this year I feel like my stats are getting ruined by short stories. So I do want to try and adjust my stats to deal with that, but I think that's going to come up in a much later goal, so we'll talk about that then. But I think the summary is that I'm pretty happy with the number of books I read in Q1. My next goal is to read good books. Like, it's not enough to just read a lot of books. I actually want those books to be books that I'm enjoying. And so I think last year I made up kind of a rating distribution that I'm aiming for. So I want to have 5% or less 1 and 2 stars. I'm currently at, for Q1, 4.8%. So that's a tick for that. Then I wanted 70% 4 and 5 stars, which I think I'm just very slightly under. So as usual, slightly too many 3 stars, but like I'm pretty close on this and I'm pretty happy with the number of 4 and 5 stars that I've been getting. Because I've been looking at my ratings this year and I'm questioning whether a lot of my 4 stars should actually be 4.5s and my 4.5 should be 5 stars. Because I feel like I did some work a while ago to try and be more generous with my ratings, or like actually just to be more expansive with my ratings and use both 1 and 5 stars more often. Because previously I was rating like so many of my books just 3 or 4 stars. So I did some work to like expand my ratings, but I feel like naturally I just compress things down again and become less extreme. So maybe I have to try fix that again. I don't know. But anyway, pretty happy that I've been reading good books. So then, my next reading goal is TBR Zero. This is something that I have claimed to have achieved previously, but always I've had like a caveat of like, but it doesn't include these books on my shelves. And so this year I'm trying for actual TBR Zero, where I've taken, I think the main thing I was excluding previously was like all the series that I had on my shelves for series that I hadn't started yet, because I've also been trying to get all my series under control, so I didn't want to start a whole bunch of new series when I was still trying to finish a bunch of other ones. So now that I have all those on my TBR shelf, I counted up, I think at the start of the year I must have had 17 books on my TBR, and I actually have them all on the shelf behind me now, which is making it a lot easier to know what I've got going on. So I had 17 books and I have read 8 of those books. So these are all the books on my TBR shelf. The top 8 are ones I've read. Admittedly, I think 2 of those books I acquired in December and 2 of them I bought this year. But anyway, I read 8 and I also bought 8 books. So overall, we've ended up that we're still at 17, which obviously means even though I've read 8 books off my TBR, I'm still behind. But I'm feeling okay about that, because the reason I bought so many books is because I finally let myself start buying books again this year, because I finally had some money again, and I kind of bought a bunch of books that I've been waiting to buy, but I don't think I'll continue to be like that going forward. I hope not. I think that I'll be doing better when we check in again after the next quarter, but let's see, I guess. Then my next goal is what I basically just mentioned, which I'm calling Series Zero, even though I don't think I'll ever be in a situation where I am like at Series Zero, which I'm counting as not necessarily having no series in progress. Like sometimes there's series where I'm caught up, but I'm waiting on more books to be released. Like I'm not counting that for Series Zero, you know? Like I'm never going to be at Series 00 because anytime I finish a series, I start a new one. So it's unlikely I'm going to like finish a bunch of series all at the same time and somehow end up at 0. Anyway, I do have a summary here. So firstly, I completed 3 series so far this year, and I've also caught up on 3 series. I actually don't know for that Fettuto and the Secret Spice. I don't know if there's going to be more in that, but I'm hopeful, so I've left it on just the caught up series part of the list rather than completed. Also, it works better for the graphics, right? Then in terms of series that I have in progress, like actively in progress, there are 5 series. 2 of them are ones that I started last year, but one of those is Witch Hat Atelier, which, as I said before, I don't really know what I'm doing with that. The other one, the Ancillary series, or the Imperial Raj trilogy. I have actually finished the trilogy, but there's a couple of spin-offs in the world that I want to read. I'm hoping to finish those in April, so I'll be finished with that soon. And I could have counted the Imperial Raj as completed, but I didn't want to cheat. And then there's also 3 series that I've started this year that I haven't caught up on or completed, but actually I'm going to complete all of those in April. Well, that's the plan. Oh, I'm also going to finish the Imperial Reg in April. Does that mean... Oh, I was going to say maybe if I finish Witch Hat Atelier, I could be at Series Zero. But also, before I finish any of those, I'm about to start 2 other series. See, so this is how Series Zero gets ruined. But I could have maybe ordered things differently and actually had Series Zero for a moment, just for a moment. Oh well, maybe I'll try again another time. But the summary is, I'm feeling like I have my series under control, and basically anytime I'm starting a series, I'm just reading 1 a month until I catch up or complete that series. So then I never really get into a situation where my series are growing out of control. Okay, then my next reading goal is basically a bunch of different reading lists. So I have like a list of lists of books that I want to read, and I'm trying to complete as many of them as possible. To be honest, probably I won't quite make it on any of these lists, but it's still helpful in terms of prioritization, I think. So the first list is 2025 releases. So far on this list, I've only read 1, and that was a short story. Loch Lamora and the Bottled Serpent, which I did like, but it was just a short story, so nothing too amazing yet. I do actually have, on either side of me, The River Has Roots and Death of an Author. Those are both 2025 releases that I'm hoping to read. This one in April, this one maybe in May, hopefully in May. I also have The Martian Contingency on order, but it hasn't come, even though it said it was going to come several weeks ago, so that's a bit of a mystery, but this is part of why I don't often read new releases when they come out straight away, because I can't even get my hands on them. And also The Amber Owl by Juliette Marillier. I'm hoping to listen to that on audiobook, because I've listened to a lot of Juliette Marillier's stuff on audiobook and enjoyed it that way. But so far, there's no sign of an audiobook. I'm pretty sure it's coming though. And then I'm pretty sure every other new release on this list hasn't been released yet, so obviously I can't have read it yet, so I don't have to feel bad about that. So I haven't made great progress on this, but there's reasons. Then my next list is 5-star predictions, and actually the only one I've read on this list is The Book of Coley, which technically I read in December last year. But I am in the progress of reading A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians, which is on this list, and also The River Has Roots is on my monthly TBR, which is on this list. So I think I'm going to start getting to some of the ones on this list, but I probably am behind. Then my next list is my priority series. So I'm doing like a video series where I'm trying the first chapter of every book series I'm interested in, and then this is the list of ones that were my top priority. I think at the start of the year it was 10, but then somehow, even though I've read 2 and then added another 3 from more of those try a chapter videos, somehow it's now at 12. The maths isn't mathing, something's wrong, but whatever. My list is now 14 books long, but I've read 2 and I have 1 other series from that list in progress, so... Oh, and I'm about to start The Will of the Many, actually. So this is probably a list I'm going to move fairly slowly on, mainly because I'm trying not to have too many series in progress at the same time. So it's like conflicting goals to some degree. But I'm happy as long as I'm reading at least 1 series from this list at all times. Maybe that's what I actually need to decide with these lists. Like, what is my happiness status? Or what do I have to be doing to be happy with the progress I'm making? If I'm saying that I don't have to have completed all of these to be happy, like what do I need to have done to be happy? I'll think about that for next quarter. Then we also have my priority rereads. So I went through all the books that I had on Goodreads that I'd read 10 or more years ago, and I picked out 36 books from that list that I would like to reread, and then I picked 12 of those as like my priority rereads, and this is the list. And I've read 2 of them. Admittedly, the 2 I've read were shorter books, but part of my problem is that there are series on this, so it's hard to fit those in against my other like priority series. I'm also thinking to try and save some of these for the very end of the year, when actually having rereads that won't mess up my favorites videos and stuff like that would be kind of beneficial. So again, my happiness status for this, I think maybe just soon. There's 2 series on this list. I need to just start one of those. In the next quarter, I think I probably do need to. Although, another option is that I start all of these in the final quarter so that I can finish these in December. Maybe that's a plan. Then my final list that I have is my want to read list on Goodreads. It was I thought 60 books at the start of the year, but again, applying maths, I think it must have been 61. And my goal was to get it down to 50. So I've pulled it all into a graphic now, and you can see I've read 8 of them. Now, admittedly, this is where all the short stories I've been reading this year have come from. So a lot of them were short stories, but still, I've read 8 of them. And then I also added 5, the ones at the bottom. So that means the list is now 58 books. So overall, I've brought it down 3, and I need to bring it down 11 in total. You know, I think we're on track for this, but I've definitely cheated by picking off a lot of the shorter ones. But we'll take it as a win anyway. Then, that's all my lists of reading that I have. My next goal was to try and read more diversely. I've had this as a goal floating around for a while. I'm always trying to decide what is the best way to even measure this. Mostly I've been focusing on like author race, but I would like to try and think about other ways of looking at it, which I think I'll talk about more in the next goal. The main goal I had for this year is to try and read one Maori authored book each month, and I did read 3 in Q1. Admittedly, I didn't read them all one each month, but still I've read 3, so I think that's a win. Even though, again, 2 of them are from the same author, but it's an author I really love, so is that a bad thing? No. The other thing I did want to do is basically take my TBR and put it into my spreadsheet so that then any stats I'm collecting on my reading, I could also collect on my TBR. So then I would know whether my TBR is diverse, not just the books I'm reading. Basically like enable myself to like curate my TBR for diversity and like see what kind of gaps potentially are in the books that I'm thinking about reading, so that then I can go and find those books. Anyway, that leads into my next reading goal, which was basically just to set up a better spreadsheet and better stats. I haven't got around to that yet, but I did get Microsoft Excel onto my Mac computer to try, and I've been trying it a little bit. I still think it's not as good as Windows Excel, but I do think maybe I like it better than Google Sheets, but Google Sheets is free, so I need to do a little bit more playing around before my trial runs out to decide what I want to do there. So hopefully by the end of the next quarter, I'll actually have a spreadsheet and some better graphs and stats, which will be fun. I love graphs and stats, so playing with spreadsheets and trying to make a better reading spreadsheet is not a hard thing at all. It's just a matter of finding time. And then my last reading goal was basically to check in on my reading goals every quarter, which is what we're doing right now. I guess the question is, do I need to do anything different about my reading in the next quarter? I think not really. I do just need to spend some time with some spreadsheets, playing with some spreadsheets. I think as well, I will for those reading lists, try and work out what my priorities are between the lists a little bit more. But also because I used the TBR Machine website, the website I made that spits out random reading prompts, that does always add a bit more randomness. And I actually like that because otherwise I'm going to just plan out my reading for the whole year and then fall behind and get very overwhelmed. So it's almost like adding that randomness stops me from planning too far in advance, which is good because otherwise I'll make a massive plan which will immediately fall apart because plans never go to plan. So let's not fall into the trap of over planning. Anyway, that is, I guess, my Q1 of reading, my favorite books, my most disappointing, and how I'm going on my goals. Let me know how your first quarter of reading went for this year and whether you've read some really great books or has it been mostly disappointing, and like just how do you think you're doing with your reading goals this year. Let's chat down in the comments. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.